Hello there, I'm Jamie Flinchball, host of People Solve Problems, and today we have Danyel Bischof-Forsyth. Danielle, glad to have you here.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Just a very brief introduction. So you have 35 years in technology, 28 years at Hallmark, which is where we actually first met, 5 years at Tyson's Food, and now you're the CTO at Brew Coffee. So quite a ride, very interesting. I'm sure we could talk about each one of those, but just for introduction purposes, give us just a snapshot of who Seven Brew is, because I'm going to guess most people don't know.
Certainly. So Brew Coffee is, think, drive-through drink with freestanding units. We went from 180 stands at the beginning of this year, and we'll be at 330 by the end of the year. So we're lucky enough to get the QSR's Breakout Brand of the Year because of the growth. We have planned for the next several years. We have commitment for 3,000 locations. Each one does over 2 million. So you can do the math. We're seeing, growth like a rocket ship. And so being here and being part of scaling this organization has been a blast.
Fantastic. So, really interesting, very different environment than say, Hallmark is 100 whatever, right? It's a very long-standing company that's been around a long time. Here, it's a fast-growing company, very different. And I'm sure with all that growth comes all sorts of different problems. And they may come at you very, very fast. So whether it's for yourself, your team, how do you manage the landscape of all the different problems, prioritization, where are they coming from? How do you know about them, all in the context of that fast growth environment?
Yeah, so, it comes from a number of places. And considering that the company is moving so quickly in so many spaces, for us, what we've done, the way we've solved that is a lot of coming together as an organization. And so we have very frequent meetings with the leadership team. We get together weekly. We get together monthly with Blackstone is invested in the organization. And so we get together with them. And so that trickled down to, even with my organization, we started implementing daily stand-ups just to, be aware of all of the things that are happening, a status of all the work that's taking place. There's so much going on concurrently, as well as surfacing any problems. So for us, the way we solved it was coming together as an organization primarily. I would say also we've put in place this year a lot of systems that monitor things for us. So we monitor KPIs. We put in, ticketing systems. We put in reporting and analytics that help us measure things. And so that's another way that's a little more automated for us to keep an eye on if something goes awry. If it's, off of what the goal would be, then we're looking at those very, very frequently. And so that's another way that we have things that input and come to us. So I would just say coming together, lots of surfacing problems quickly for us. And, we're moving so fast. It's just a very transparent, open organization where everybody feels comfortable bringing to the table what the current issues are.
I love that. So building the infrastructure around that monitoring, along with some, I'll call it human glue, which is the daily stand-ups. Let me ask about the daily stand-ups, because
Sure.
a lot of people will get that applies to operations, and they go, "Oh, you don't need a daily stand-up in in the technology wing of an organization." So can you tell me a bit about the structure? Like, what's if you have any, but what's the structure of those daily stand-ups? What are you covering, and how do you run them?
Yeah, happy to. So one of the key hires that I made this year was I brought in somebody that is a certified project manager, very structured in how we tackle our work, and he leads the stand-up with the organization. He also maintains a set of, we do have a Kanban, and so we have a set of cards, and we ask people update those, usually before they go home each day, so that they're updated when we come in the next morning, or they come in early. We do it first thing, early in the morning. And so they update the cards. And so what we do is we all gather. We are an in-person culture here, and so we gather in person physically, and we pull up the Kanban, and my PM works the board. And so we go through and we look at any place that we say the reasons why we come together each day. So the reason we come together is so that everybody is aware of what's currently constantly active so that everybody can surface problems or anything that needs to be escalated during that meeting. We don't solve it there, but they escalate it there so that it can be solved. It's a place where we can ask for assistance or advice. If somebody's got a blocker and somebody there can help, it's a way just for visibility and for somebody to raise their hand. And then I think it's been a beautiful way to help everybody learn. So they're learning about what's going on in the rest of the organization. They have an opportunity to not just focus on their own work, but to kind of lift their head up and look at what other people are doing too. So we do that. We work it every day. We try to go as quickly as possible. I'm really identifying where there's issues. If things are going smoothly, things are going smoothly. We can look at the Kanban and see that. So it's really for us to identify where we've got an issue, a blocker, somebody needs help. And so we state that as the purpose of us coming together as an organization each day. And I told the guys when we started, because they moaned and groaned about, do we really have to do this every day? And I said, if you don't see value in it, then come talk to me and we'll see about making adjustments. And, we're in now 12 months going strong. And, I think they actually enjoy coming together for that purpose.
That's great. And so I asked that question because I know there's lots of listeners out there that are hesitant around the same thing, and to hear how that works and how valuable it is fantastic. And I assume people have a chance to get their favorite 7 Brew coffee beverage on their way into the huddle. So,
But of course.
there they go. So you mentioned you don't do problem solving in the meeting, but then happens afterwards. So as a startup, there's I don't want to say fewer guardrails, but there's more degrees of freedom open to you as you build solutions. So how do you treat ideation and solution development, either for yourself or for your team?
Yeah, so when it comes to both ideation and coming up with the solution, especially when I came to 7 Brew Coffee, I didn't have experience in this industry. I didn't have experience in QSR. I didn't have experience in this size of organization. And so it became really obvious to me, that as we were looking at problems and looking at opportunities, that I was going to need to look externally and really prepare when it came to ideating for solutions. There's nobody telling us exactly what to go do. It's up to the team to come up with what the right, solutions are based on the problems. And so what we do is we talk about our preparation is key. And so when we come in, we'll set up time for an ideation or a brainstorming. And so part of that is the preparation that goes into it. Making sure that we look at, what others in the industry are doing, make sure we really understand what the problem is we're trying to solve here and what that uniquely means to us. I have continued to expand my network of fellow technologists, those in the QSR space. I've kept that network very fresh because I'll go ask them how they've solved similar problems that they've encountered. They're probably a few years ahead of us, and so just getting input from them. And looking at best practice and thinking about, what some different ideas could be on how to solve it, so that when we come together as a group with the right folks, usually across different disciplines, my business partners will be there, obviously the key technologists on our team, and anybody else who we think would have great ideas to solve the problem. We come together in a pretty structured way to then attack it. But I would tell you the key for us is the prep. We don't just show up and say, hey, what ideas do you have today? Yeah. Just making sure that we come with that knowledge and with our own experiences to be able to engage in that dialogue.
I love the preparation, because a lot of people think ideation begins with, coming up with solutions, but there is work to be done, right? There's research to be done. And while this wasn't the main point you made, I'm amazed at how infrequently or unnaturally it seems for people to go look outside for solutions that already exist, right? Whether it's outside their team or outside their company. It seems to be almost a natural biological resistance to that, almost, it seems. So now you're in a company that's growing fast. I've been part of companies growing fast. I've advised companies growing fast. Speed becomes the order of the day. But the big risk with speed is we don't do a good job. We don't do a thorough job. We have a lot of fragility left underneath things, or we have to go do it again. So how do you balance the natural speed requirements of high growth with thoroughness and rigor and resilience and all the things that come with a slow, thoughtful approach.
Yeah, so speed absolutely is the first order here. I talked about just the rate at which we're rolling out new stands, and everything we can do to continue to make that happen is what the focus is. But what I would tell you is you definitely have to make sure that you are where it needs to be thorough and thoughtful. We need to be, really take the time to say, wait a minute, I know we're again on this rocket ship, but there are places where we need to slow down and make sure we're making the right decisions. And, I use a phrase with my team because we're a very new team. I just came in January. I built the entire IT organization. And so we're all, less than a year tenure within the group. And for me, what I've been using the phrase is, we need to know where we're pouring concrete and where we're going to have decisions that we're going to live with for a very long time. And then we need to know where there's somewhere we can really experiment and try a few things and really, quickly move and learn fast. And so distinguishing between the different types of decisions we have to make, I think is important for us to make sure we're spending the right amount of time on that solutioning and ideating and testing. So for us, I had another friend that I just met up with that said he used a very similar phrase. He said, if there's one-way doors and two-way doors, and he said you're identifying which doors once you go through you can't go back, and ones where you can come back. And for that has really helped us move with speed and know where it's not even that we're making shortcuts when we move fast or it's a two-way door. It's just that the way we go about laying the concrete is a little bit different for us.
So in making that decision, right? Because that's sort of a front door decision, in the process. And so how do you make that decision? Like, do you have a rubric, or is this where you just tap into intuition and 35 years of experience?
It's probably a little of both. I would guess. I mean, I've seen, as an example, we're implementing a new ERP. That's a concrete decision. That has lots of tentacles to other systems. It impacts multiple organizations. It's hard to undo once you put it in. So, things like that. I don't, it's an interesting question. I'm going to go think about what my rubric would be to make that decision, but probably things that are hard to undo, that have big consequences if you choose incorrectly. That connect to other systems that impact larger organizations. And I would say in the tech space for us, we have some very key things that expand beyond just their single function. If I'm going to pick something that's just a single function, single purpose technology, then that's a lot easier than if it's something that's going to have its tentacles in multiple things and be more embedded within the environment. So it's probably some of those criteria, I would say, cause us to say that they're either more permanent or poured in concrete, the ones that aren't.
And then those ones that are one-way doors poured in concrete, are you just taking more time and being more analytical and thorough, or are there different ways of experimenting your way into a decision?
No, I think and I'm not saying that we aren't analytical and thorough on, nearly all the decisions that
Sure.
we're
Yeah.
making. I think it's probably just maybe the speed at which we move and maybe how many checks that we check. Is probably the difference between the two. And yeah, that's probably true, Jamie. I mean, it's probably a little bit more, spend a little more time, just really make sure that, I include, and I usually include others with the outside of our group, but really go through and, dot our I's, cross our T's, talk to maybe a few more references, maybe put a little more stage gate and checkpoints in place to make sure a little more formality around the selection process. I mean, I think everything is probably just amped up a little bit more and a little more thorough up front, because in the other decisions, I can make mistakes faster there. And so it's just, I can move faster. I can, we can do a few things to try it out. And then it doesn't, no harm to go back and say, okay, we're not doing those two. We're going to go forward with this one that worked. Whereas I can't implement 3 ERPs and test that and then pick the one that works out best.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about your team. I want to ask about coaching, but kind of before we get to coaching, you kind of mentioned something earlier. This team didn't exist a year ago. You had to build it from scratch. So, were there any sort of traits or characteristics you were looking for in building a team from scratch based on what you knew you had to do?
Yeah, of course. So for me, knowing that we're a small team, small but mighty, I was looking for people that had high learning agility because you come in and we give very broad titles because you could be developing something one day, you could be integrating something the next, you could be writing a policy the third day. It wasn't, we don't have specialists when we are so small and moving so quickly. So I really was looking for people that were eager to learn, that were excited about learning, that were willing to jump into a new environment with new languages, new tools, and jump in and figure it out. And so I think for me, I was looking for groups that brought that type of attitude, I guess, and love for learning. I think the second thing when I started to look at the team, I really did map out kind of, some general skills that they would come with were important to bring in. I couldn't have an organization that all looked the same.
Right.
And so, making sure that I mentioned the incredibly strong project manager. I knew we needed that when we're moving so fast. Brought in a cyber expert because we needed to ramp up quickly in that space. Brought in some people that were focused on hardware and software and in the environment because again, we need to have that, incredibly solid base to build off of. And then I looked for kind of full stack developers that could develop anything in any space because I didn't know what we'd have to be developing versus buying, but having those developers. And then those that had experience in integration, because again, I knew that we were going to be buying a lot of things and gluing them all together because we didn't have a lot from a foundational standpoint. And so when I look at the team, I would say that's pretty much the type of organization that we built here.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the term high learning agility um, for a whole bunch of reasons. But coming back to coaching, right out of the gate, high learning agility people generally take better to coaching than those that don't have that. Right? They're seeking it. It's just part of the equation. Um, so just I want to get about your approach to coaching. Is it standard? Is it dynamic? Is it based on the individual or the situation? So especially as you have a team that you're building and growing, how do you approach coaching and shifting your approach to coaching as needed?
Yeah, and I'll share a little bit of a story here because I had an aha after 35 years in the business. I still am surprised, on the daily about what I can learn myself. And so when I first came in, I still remember I attended one of your coaching classes. It's been many, many years ago, and one of the key things that I learned from that was just really, really basic about coaching, but it was around the question. So not around providing the solution, which, is easy for all of us, especially I'm wired that way. Just here's the solution, go do that. And it was hard to break that habit. And I think I've really tried to hone that over the last 20 years since I had the class. But so I knew it was about asking questions. But when I first came here and built this team, there was a lot of inexperienced individuals that came to the team. And I was asking the questions, but I was getting really, really frustrated that I was asking the questions in a way that I assumed that they had already asked the question themselves. Like, did you check this? And have you thought about this? And have you gone and done this? And I finally had an individual stop me and ask me if I had a minute and pulled me into a private conference room and said, look, you're asking questions in a way that you expected them to already have gone and asked those questions themselves, but they don't even have the experience to draw on to have known to ask those questions. And I thought, what a gift that person gave me because I then did a lot of thinking about my approach and what questions I was asking. And so I really tried to shift to ask more questions that help them not just check the direction they're heading or the path that they're on, but really have them reflect on what questions should they be asking, how are they learning themselves? And so it has been a deal maker. It has really shifted the conversation. I'm way less frustrated in the interaction and the coaching, and it's been a lot more fruitful as well. So just very, very transparently, I had to make that adjustment from a coaching standpoint, just because I was making the wrong assumptions based on their experience. And I wasn't going about it the right way. Like I said, I needed to ask them more questions that had them reflect on, what they have learned because they are great learners and they can do that. And so that adjustment was pretty key this year for me.
That's fantastic, great reflection and great lesson learned. The point is, no matter how much we advance our leadership, there's always a new situation or a new capability that we have to grow into, and that should never stop. So that's what makes it fun. So thanks, Danielle, for sharing your story, your experiences, your perspective. I'm sure all our listeners will benefit greatly.
Thanks, Jamie.
Are you a leader looking to level up your skills? Discover the JFlinch Learning Lab, your gateway to insightful video courses on culture change, management systems, problem solving, and much more. Immerse yourself into content created by me and transform your leadership approach. Ready to grow? Visit jflinch.com/learning lab and use code podcast for an exclusive 30% discount. Invest in your leadership journey today.